right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thermal Gard Window and Door podcast, and we are really excited about our first episode today. We are sitting down with the founder and owner of Thermal Gard Window and Door, and he's just going to kind of take us through his story, and then we'll kind of go all the way through up to today and talk about what we're doing now and kind of if there's any new things or stuff going on he wants to mention. So without any further ado, let me introduce Doug Roser, owner of Thermal Gard Window and Door.
I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for coming in, Doug.
Thanks so much.
So really what we want to do is just get it straight from the horse's mouth, the story of kind of where you came from, how you started, all the way through up to today. So
Okay, the genesis of Thermal Gard Window and Door.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
we got to where we're at today. Very good.
Go ahead.
Just so you know, I grew up here in Allen County. I went to Shawnee High School. I was really focused more on athletics in school than academics. Played football, wrestled, ran track. Got a offer to have a partial scholarship at Bowling Green University. So I went up to Bowling Green University after I graduated on the wrestling team up there. And that was in 1973 was the year I went to Bowling Green. I graduated from high school in spring of 73. So in fall of 73, I started attending Bowling Green University, and I was with the wrestling program there. As we went through that year, I didn't really have a focus on what a major was going to be in college. I didn't know. I think I put down biology.
A little bit different from business.
A little bit, yeah. Wasn't I was just a biology major, marine biology, as a matter of fact.
Oh, there you go.
Really?
Yeah, so I was a little bit specific in that regard.
Were you thinking, I love to fish?
I love to fish, and that really is my my passion. That's my hobby these days. My hobby is fly fishing, and I've been blessed to fly fish in a lot of places around this country and around the world, which is really a blessing to be able to do that. But that time leaving Bowling Green University, after a year up there, as I said, my focus was really back here in Lima. I had started dating my wife before I went to college that year, and she was still back here in Lima. So it seemed like every time I had an opportunity to leave school and come back to Lima, I was back here in Lima, Ohio, and then back and forth. So I really wasn't a good student. So at the end of that year, I had not been able to continue my wrestling program. So I was out of school at the end of my freshman year at Bowling Green University. Didn't have the money to go back, didn't have the scholarship offer. So I had to find a job. And what happened after I got out of Bowling Green, I went to work for Westinghouse. They had a small motors division and an aerospace division here in Lima. And I went to work at Westinghouse, which is down on Dixie Highway there. I worked there starting in June of 74. And I worked at Westinghouse, just factory work, until spring of 75. And then they had a layoff, and I was one of the newbies there, so I ended up getting laid off in the spring of 75 from Westinghouse. After I got laid off, I had an opportunity. This is an interesting thing. I met a guy through association with my wife's family who was a timber buyer. So I had an opportunity in the summer of 1975 to get involved in buying standing timber in Northwest Ohio for a company out of Germany called Crown Timber. And I was what they call a bird dog. They'd send me out to try to find quality trees in woods in Northwest Ohio. So I'd go out and I'd see woods, and I learned to look at a woods and see if they had, what we primarily bought was standing white oak, bur oak, and walnut trees.
Fascinating. I had no idea any job like that ever existed.
That's
amazing.
What they do is they would buy these 3 walnut and oak trees, and they would buy them here in Northwest Ohio, ship them out of the Port of Toledo back to Germany, and then they would veneer them in Germany. And the reason they did that is because regulations, they could get twice as much veneer material out of a log in Germany than they could in the United States, because the United States had
Some regulations.
That kept it the thickness of the veneer.
Wow.
So it was interesting. I went out and I'd find a woods that looked like it had some timber. Then I'd research who owned that, and then I'd make contact. I wasn't really the buyer, but I was what they called the bird dog. I would find it, and then I would bring the timber buyer together with a meeting with the landowner. And I did that for the summer of 1975. Summer of 1975. And it was interesting. I got a couple nice contracts, and I was just earning straight commission on what we did. And but I knew that was just filling some time.
Right.
Anyhow, in 75, in the fall, August of 1975, I responded to an ad that I saw from New Sash Windows. New Sash was a company out of Toledo. New Sash had an office here in Lima up on Baxter Street. It was actually catty-cornered from Lima Cadillac at that time, which was on North Street in Baxter. That location right now is part of the parking lot of the 770 building, so it's all gone now. But at that time, they had an office to sell New Sash windows in Northwest Ohio, which was a branch office of the Toledo office. So I got a job selling replacement windows in 1975. And from 1975, August of 1975 through all of 76 and into the first part of 1977, I worked for this company out of Toledo, Ohio, located here in Lima. And at that time, we served all of Northwest Ohio, which is basically the same territory I do now.
Right.
We also did some work at that time up in Northeast Indiana.
Okay.
So I spent some time in Indiana selling windows over there. And at a surprising time, I did very, very good selling windows. I had a great deal of success at a very young age. So I had this competitive nature because of growing up being involved in athletics with football and wrestling. Of course, wrestling is a one-on-one. You don't rely on anybody else. It's your own abilities to be successful or not. And so I had this competitive nature in me. So I ended up, and after failing at college, my 1 year in college, I really had to prove something to myself, and I wanted to succeed.
Absolutely.
And so I did really quite well.
Did you have any training or somebody to help you kind of show you the ropes, or you just...
Not in the beginning. Shortly after I joined New Sash, then they did hire a sales manager.
Okay.
A good friend of mine that I became good friends with by the name of Dan Carey. And it's an interesting story, too, as my journey continues to get me to where I'm at today. Dan was a sales manager, and I was a salesman, even though he'd never sold windows, but he was in the insurance business and came out of the insurance business. So he helped me develop sales skills. As a matter of fact, there was a time that for probably close to a year, we worked as a two-man sales team.
Okay.
And I was very good at presentation of the product and persistent closer, and he was just kind of a straight man, and we had a good two-man operation.
Yeah, fed off of each other in the home.
We did, and it worked very well. So I learned a lot during that time. So this was in let's move up to 1977. I ended up leaving Lima because the relationship that I had with my future wife was kind of put on hold. So I wanted to get out of town. So I packed up and I headed to Florida. And I moved down to Pompano Beach, Florida. And I set up residence in February of 1977 in Pompano Beach, Florida. And I went to work for a window company down there. You know, I'd been successful in Northwest Ohio. And as a matter of fact, during that time that I worked for Newsash, I was able to buy a brand new Corvette and pay cash for it.
Wow.
Nice.
At a very young age.
Yeah. So you found your niche.
A brand new Corvette back then was just about $10,000, but it was a 1976 Corvette, but I was able to pay cash for it. And I had that when I went to Florida to try to sell windows. And when I got down to Florida, I decided to try to sell windows because I'd done well up north.
Yeah.
Well, Pompano Beach is in a different area than Northwest Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people in that area are from the Northeast, either New York, New Jersey.
Okay.
That was the predominant demographics of the people that I had to try to sell windows to.
Yeah. Different culture.
Different culture. And I spent from February until August down there losing the business aspect. I wasn't able to be successful down there.
Just wasn't working out.
It wasn't working. Yeah, it was a young guy from the Midwest trying to sell Northeast people windows, and they weren't buying it. So it didn't work out. So I decided, and during that time that I was down there, my wife Sue and I had gotten re-engaged. So we were going to get married in the fall of '77. So we came back to Lima, Ohio in August of '77, getting ready for our wedding, which was going to be in November of '77.
Okay.
When I came back after spending the time that I did in Florida, not being successful in the window business, I always had a passion for cars. So Bill Commons had a Pontiac dealership, and I always liked Pontiacs. So I went to work for Bill Commons in 1977. And when we got married, I was working there at that time. And again, I'd been very successful as a car salesman, never being in the car business, but I was successful as a car salesman for Bill. It used to be down on Spring Street, is where the Pontiac agency was here in town. So at the end of '77 and all of 1978 and all of 1979, I was in the car business. But during that time that I was in the car business, some things had happened. A gentleman that worked with me at Newsash, his name was Jim DeVita. He was an installer at Newsash as I was a salesman. Jim had contact with a company called Thermal Gard. And it was the invitation to bring Thermal Gard replacement windows into Northwest Ohio. His expertise was installation. Mine was sales. And we worked together for the time there at Newsash together. So we agreed in '79 to start a two-man operation where I sold and he put them in. A little two-man operation, and we had the opportunity to bring Thermal Gard to Lima, Ohio, to open up the first Thermal Gard distributorship. We were going to start in the fall of '79, and I was going to leave the Pontiac agency, but Bill Commons, the dealer at that time, had a heart attack. And I did not want to leave during that time. I did not want to tell him I was leaving because actually I was his top salesman at the Pontiac agency. So I waited until he got healthy, and I did not leave the Pontiac agency until March of 1980 is when I left, and we started a company called Sash and Storm Incorporated, which was the first Thermal Gard distributor in Lima, Ohio. Now, Thermal Gard is a division of Seasonal Industries out of Indiana, Pennsylvania. Their factory for the Thermal Gard window is in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Since 1972, it's been in Punxsutawney. Seasonal had been in business since 1947, but they started a separate division for Thermal Gard windows. Seasonal carried a lot of different brands of windows and storm doors and storm windows, but they had a Thermal Gard division, which was their top-of-the-line replacement window, and it was only sold through exclusive distributorships. And we were able in 1980 to bring that exclusive distributorship to Lima, Ohio with a two-man operation. We really didn't have a facility at that time. Jim owned an apartment over on Ohio Street in Lima, and he had a three-car garage in the back of it. And we used that three-car garage for our warehouse. That same year, we decided to get a storefront, and we bought we rented an office space in Park Plaza, which is right across from Woodlawn Cemetery here in Lima on Spencerville Road. So we moved in there and had a sales office there, so we had a location. And then the warehouse was out of his three-car garage. But in 1981, we had a pretty successful year in 1980 as we got started.
Yeah.
And in 1981, we decided to buy a property on Kibbe Street, 123 East Kibbe Street. So we bought a property there that had an office, a showroom, and a little bit of a warehouse in the back, metal building warehouse in the back.
Yeah. So let me back you up just a little bit real quick, Doug. When you said Jim DeVita, that was his name?
Yes.
When he contacted you, did he already have an intention to go off and kind of do that, or did you were just hanging out as friends and you guys just started talking and it kind of came about organically? Like, do you know if he had a motive originally to reach back out to you?
Well, the whole aspect of that came through the third party, which was Dan Carey. He was the sales manager and Dan had originally talked about it.
Okay.
But then Dan kind of backed away from it. So as Dan backed away from it, that's when I moved in because I could take care of the sales end of it.
Interesting. Okay.
So Dan was in the picture originally when the idea of bringing Thermal Gard windows to Lima, Ohio. And there was a company called, I think Ohio Metal, which was owned by a guy by the name of Dan Edwards.
Yeah.
That was originally started that idea of bringing Thermal Gard to Lima, Ohio.
Okay.
And he needed to have a couple people that knew the window business because Dan did not know the window business. And he knew of Jim and Dan Carey. So he talked to them, but that kind of fell apart, that whole conversation, and never materialized.
Gotcha.
And so that's really how
it came about.
Jim and I ended up getting back together.
Okay.
He approached me about getting in the window business with him and taking over the sales aspect.
So that was the moment he came to you where the idea was born kind of,
Yeah.
at least for you.
Yeah, for me to get back in the window. And I like the window business better than the car business.
Okay.
I really did.
Why is that?
Because with the window business, you can see that there's a need out there. I could drive by a house and see bad windows. I could see plastic over a house. I could pull in and talk to the homeowner, and I could prospect people that need the product. With cars, you don't know. You got to sit there and wait for people to come in. And that's the one part of the car business that I did not like. I wasn't able to prospect the way that I had prospect for new clients in the window business. And it's still that way today.
Yeah.
I can't drive down the street in Northwest Ohio or a road in Northwest Ohio without looking at the windows of a house and say, do you need windows or do you don't, or are your windows good? That's just something I've learned to do. So that's why I wanted to get back in the window business, and that was the attraction for it.
That makes sense. So, you mentioned you're really kind of successful that first year in 1980, which led you to the purchase of a property in 1981. What were the original challenges? Because I know it couldn't have been easy to have that much success, or were you guys just naturally gifted and everything came easy?
No, it didn't come easy. It was we did a little bit of advertising. back in the day, that's when we actually did, in the early days, we started working on TV, actually, originally with a lady by the name of Easter Straker, who used to be a talk show host here on hometown stations,
Yeah.
WLIO. And she had a station, and I would go on there at least once a week, and we'd do an interview with one another. I'd take my window samples in there, set them up on her show, and show the windows and show how they tilt into clean, which was almost magical back then. Nobody had windows that tilt into clean, so we had something unique. We got into home shows and fairs, any home show and fair that we could get into. I know at that point in time in the early days, every weekend I was in fairs and home shows in the spring. So I wasn't home that much. And then when we weren't in fairs or shows, we were prospecting, going door to door, talking to people.
Gotcha.
Excuse me.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're in the new building, 1981. What kind of went from there? I mean, more employees,
Yes.
business is growing.
That's what happened. We evolved. I eventually needed some more salespeople, so I hired a salesman. Jim needed more help to install, so he hired some installation people. Little bit by little bit. I think I had 3 salesmen at one time. And it was kind of interesting as we grew. When we originally started, we were not incorporated. During that time after we bought the property, Jim and I bought that as a 50-50 partnership. So the property of the business was owned by the two of us, 50-50. And he then started a corporation called, he incorporated Sash and Storm Inc. So we were doing business under Sash and Storm Inc. Thermal Gard.
Okay.
That was the name, Sash and Storm Inc. Thermal Gard. And he incorporated. So the business was actually his, except for the property. We had 50-50 partnership. And the way we ran the business back then, we shared profits.
Yeah.
So we were running loose partnership, I guess, is the way that you could put it.
Yeah.
That all started in 1980 and into 1981. And by 1985, we'd grown, and we had really started to establish ourselves with Thermal Gard on a national basis. Again, we were just two small dealer. Thermal Gard at that point in time was the #1 replacement window in the United States.
Wow.
Out of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. They had dealers all over the East Coast, all the way to the Mississippi River. Jim and I, in this small territory that we had in Lima, Ohio, at that time they had a distributor in Toledo, they had one in Columbus, they had one in Cincinnati, one in Indianapolis. But for our small market that we had in Northwest Ohio, we were doing phenomenal business. And the national sales manager, Bob Algie, would always talk about DeVita and Roser in Lima, Ohio, their market share. What are they doing to get that type of market share in the market that we had there? The other dealers got the idea that DeVita and Roser was an Italian Jew. I mean, Jim at DeVita and the Jewish guy, Roser, they always just took me as being, because my last name, you change the R and you get Rosen, which is really a Jewish name.
Right.
And I'm referred to Doug Rosen quite often, so that's just another story, I guess. But they were wondering, how does that, the Italian and the Jew partners get that type of market share out of a little territory in Lima, Ohio? So that's an interesting story that was taking place as a sideline. So we were growing. We expanded our installation, expanded our sales, got secretary in there, and it was a nice little business growing. And by 1985, we had an opportunity to expand our business to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And at that point in time, we made a decision that if we expand to Indiana, somebody's got to be the lead over there. So I decided to be the lead to go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and open up the store in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And when we did that, we decided to make a separate corporation. So we incorporated in the state of Indiana under Sash and Storm Incorporated, Indiana. We had Sash and Storm Incorporated in Ohio, which Jim owned at that point in time. But I owned, let me back up. At that time when we incorporated, I became the majority owner of the Indiana Corporation and also became the minority owner of the Ohio Corporation. And he was the majority owner in Ohio and the minority owner in Indiana. So we were really at that point in time 50-50 partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had two businesses and we were splitting profits and doing that. That was in 1985 is when we expanded into, that would have been Labor Day 1985 of when we expanded into Indiana. And by 1987, my Indiana operation had expanded to the same level as the Ohio Corporation. So we had two different offices that were equal
Yeah.
in what we were doing during that time period.
So you took everything you learned from Ohio in 5 years, you took it to Indiana and did it in 2.
Pretty much, and I had some good help to do that. I had one of the gentlemen was a salesman by the name of Greg Potts, and Greg had been an installer for us in Ohio, but I took him from the installation side of it to the sales side when we went to Indiana, and I had some other good salesmen that I acquired over there. Another one from Ohio that came over there. So, but then the rest of the company was all Indiana people that we had established. So we did take what we learned during our time in Ohio, incorporated a lot of that as we went into Indiana.
Okay.
So by 1977, both corporations were the same size. And we decided at that point in time to buy each other out. So I bought out the entire corporation of Indiana, and Jim bought out my shares of the Ohio Corporation. So at that point in time in 1987, we were neighboring distributors. It's interesting, during that whole time, I never left Ohio. I mean, I lived, my residence was in Ohio, so I commuted back and forth from Lima to Fort Wayne. It ended up actually being 17 years
Wow.
that I went from Lima to Fort Wayne. But I commuted the whole time. Lima's my home.
It's a lot of miles.
Yeah, it's a lot of miles. I went through a lot of vehicles in those days. So by 1987, two separate corporations, we were no longer partners. That was after a 7-year partnership. And we had ups and downs during that time period, as all partners do.
Yeah.
But we were neighboring Thermal Gard distributors. After being neighboring Thermal Gard distributors for years, Jim decided to leave Thermal Gard in 1991 and take on another product. And when he made that decision, the company, the factory, came back and asked me, could I reestablish the Ohio territory? I said, yes, I can. And in 1991, we reopened the Ohio territory at 216 East Kibbe Street, where we're presently located at, with a Thermal Gard distributor that serviced Northwest Ohio, and I still had the Indiana distributorship in Fort Wayne. when I was in Fort Wayne, we also at one point had expanded to South Bend. We had an office in South Bend, and that was kind of hard to handle, being that far away.
3 locations.
Yeah. And eventually we ended up closing down South Bend and keeping it down to Fort Wayne and Lima back and forth, which is pretty easy to handle 2 operations.
Gotcha. Okay. So obviously a lot of growth, a lot of expansion. Now you guys are, you're separating. Thermal Gard's coming to you, and they're like, hey, can you reopen this? You say yes. A lot of ups and downs.
Well, 1991 was a very pivotal year in my life, in my business life. It started in February, where February 20th of 1991, I gave my life to Jesus Christ and put him on the throne of my heart. Changed my whole perspective of the future. Also in 1991, I had that opportunity to reopen the Lima territory. And it was unique because when I had that opportunity, I had worked with a gentleman out of the Lima office, Paul Illig, since 1983. And as my former partner made the transition away from Thermal Gard, Paul made the decision to stay with Thermal Gard, and he stayed with me in the Lima office. And that was the beginning of a great partnership that him and I had working together. He became my sales manager in the Lima office in 1991 and continued that position into 2025 as my sales manager.
It's a long time.
A long time. I have a great debt of gratitude to Paul in what he's done for our company and what he's done for me personally.
Absolutely. So for some other business owner, different industry, different area, it doesn't matter. What advice would you give them to, like, when they're expanding, when they're seeing growth? How would you explain to them, hey, keep it going, do these things? What advice could you give them?
The type of advice I would share is to be very conservative and be very persistent and patient to let the business develop. Do not get ahead of yourself. In the early days, I did have what I call the Napoleonic influence. I wanted to expand and be king of the world,
Yeah.
And I realized that was really more than I could handle. So the realization coming back to manage things that you can manage, that you can control to some extent. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get deep in debt. That's probably one of the main lessons I learned is during, we started the business with really no capital and no investors behind us. So the two of us kind of built the original business just on our own, just money in, money out, money in, money out. Try to be good resources with the resources that you do have. Do not get into any deep debt. There was times that became a challenge for me. So one of the lessons I learned is patience and perseverance. Patience and perseverance. The thing I learned being a Thermal Gard distributor is a very high percentage of new dealers that come on do not make it. They don't manage their money well. Probably at best 25% dealers actually make it. Of 100% of the dealers they bring on, I'd see people come in, guns blazing, and 3 years later they would be gone. I saw other dealers that were very, very successful, but then didn't know how to handle the success. I saw lifestyles that were extravagant And then the next thing you know, they're out of business too. And it's important in the home improvement business that we are in is that when you sell a product to the customer, the number one fear that people have in home improvement business is dealing with loss. People think they're going to buy something and they're going to lose because the company isn't there to take care of them. And so it is so important as a home improvement dealer to make sure that we establish trust, and the people have faith that we're going to be here to stand behind them. And the nice thing about it is here in 2025, we're looking at 45 years in business with the same product, standing behind the same product, getting the same product from the same factory. Every other week I get a delivery of windows from the plant, the same plant in Punxsutawney that I started to do business with in 1980. So 45 years later, I've been able to stand behind all the products that we sell to the customers with quality installation and quality service. If somebody's got a problem, we're there to take care of it. So we eliminate that fear of loss, hopefully with a homeowner. When they think about replacement windows in Northwest Ohio, I can't think of anybody else in Northwest Ohio that has a track record like that, that has dealt with the same product for 45 years, the same people for 45 years. And, so I'm trying to establish a company that gives a homeowner, if they do business with Thermal Gard Window and Door, they have trust. As we've gone through this, one of the interesting things, it was probably about 20 years ago, we were doing some commercials, and we were doing a commercial once in August. And I wanted to focus on energy savings from air conditioning standpoint. We're talking about the dog days of summer. And that's when I had the idea of introducing my dog Dudley into the commercial about the dog days of summer and tying it in with him. And that was 20 years ago. So I introduced Dudley in that first commercial, just kind of as a whim. And it was really well received. People really enjoyed it. Now, Dudley is actually my third Westie. I had two Westies previous to Dudley. I had a Winston was my first Westie, and then he had a brother, McDougal. And so I had Winston and McDougal, two of them, for a long time. And then when they had both passed after about 14 years old, then I got Dudley. And we had Dudley, and Dudley was in his first year with us when he did his first commercial, and he lived to be 16 and a half, my first Dudley. So I'm on my second Dudley right now. Yeah. After we got established with Dudley as our spokes dog for Thermal Gard Window and Door, that was just kind of a little branding thing that we did. And it's amazing how well that's taken off. And people maybe don't know me, but they know Dudley. And they don't know Thermal Gard Window and Door, but they want some of those Dudley windows. And in New York City, I've been recognized as Dudley's dad.
Wow.
In Key West, I've been recognized as Dudley's dad on vacation. When I'm on vacation, people they say, "You're Dudley's dad." They don't know my name, but they know Dudley. So it's been an amazing branding thing that we've done.
Yeah, it is great branding, and even on the window cleaner, that's the original Dudley, your first Dudley is on there. So
well, the two of them look identical, really.
Yeah, they
anymore.
do.
Yeah,
they do.
It's remarkable.
When you see them anymore, you can't tell one for the next.
No, you can't. So a lot of people ask you that question, I'm sure.
Like, I do.
How many Dudleys have you had?
Yeah, Even the Dudley one, they said, I've been watching them since I was a kid.
Yeah.
No, you haven't. It has been a long time.
Yeah, but it feels like it. That's amazing. So, Doug, if you want to just kind of bring us up to today and kind of where you're at, where the business is at, kind of, just even where you want to go into the future. Just kind of tell us your thoughts on that.
where we're at today, in my story that I told, I talked about having 2 locations, Fort Wayne and Lima, Ohio. We ended up closing Fort Wayne down in 2002. So since 2002, we've been focused strictly out of the Lima location. What caused me to close the Fort Wayne operation down was in 2002, the majority of our advertising was done through telemarketing. We had a telemarketing room in Fort Wayne. We had a telemarketing room in Lima. And in 2002, Indiana came out with a do not call list against telemarketing companies, where I had to have written permission to even call my existing customers, or else I could be in trouble. And so we tried to abide by that very stringently. If somebody was on a do not call, we did not call them. So we screened all of our calling list to make sure anybody that did not want to get called did not get called. And we were very diligent about that. But in the summer of 2002, I got a letter from the Attorney General of the state of Indiana. It said, Mr. Roser, cease and desist your operation immediately. You're in violation of the do not call list. And you are subject to a $90,000 fine.
Oh, geez.
I said, who, what, where, and how? We'll have to investigate and get back with you. But shut your business down until you hear from us. Which I did, because a $90,000 fine is astronomical.
Absolutely, yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I finally heard back from the Attorney General and said, no, it was not your company that had a violation, so you can go back to work now. And that was in, I think, August of 2002. Well, at that point in time, my business was down in Ohio. My business was up in Ohio by 10% in 2002 from the previous year. But because of that do not call list in Indiana, my business was down 60%.
Wow.
So I was losing money every week in Indiana. And after that call from the Attorney General of the state of Indiana, I made the decision to close down the office in Indiana, which at that point in time I'd had long-term employees in Indiana because I'd been in business for 17 years over there.
Right.
So I decided to shut down the office in Indiana, which was a tough decision to make. That decision came to me one night after a Wednesday night church service. Pastor Turner shared a message about relinquishing something that you're hanging on to. And it hit me right between the eyes. What I was trying to hang on to was that 17-year business in Indiana that I had nurtured, but because of a regulation from the government, it was
dying out.
It was dying out, yeah. So I had to let go. Mm-hmm. And I focused all my attentions back in Ohio, and it's paid good dividends. It was a tough decision to make, but it was good. So everything was back here in Ohio. I never had to leave Ohio. I always still lived here, so now I had a shorter commute to work, you might say.
Yeah, less of a drive. There you go.
I had a 10-minute drive from home to the office instead of an hour every day. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So you shut that down in 2002. You're back fully in Ohio, and I guess kind of bring us up to speed to today. You know, how many employees did you have then? Is it the same number as now?
No, we've grown. We've had a nice growth through the years, and at the present time, I think we've got 31 employees. Probably at that time in 2002 in Ohio, I might have had 15. So
Okay.
We've probably doubled our employees in Ohio.
Yeah.
I think at one point when I had both operations, I might have had 20 employees or something like that.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've grown. We've grown. Today, we still focus, our bread and butter are windows and doors. That is the heart of this business. The third product that we sell are patio enclosures.
Yeah.
And we've expanded with them quite nicely, and we're doing some beautiful, beautiful patio enclosures these days.
Yeah.
And so the patio enclosure in business consists of probably about 15% of our overall business.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's windows and entry doors. In the replacement market, we do a small amount of new construction, but that's a small percentage of our overall volume. Mm-hmm. It's primarily retrofit in the replacement market is what it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any more closing facts about the story or little things you'd like to mention before we jump into our next segment?
The thing I want to encourage anybody that gets into business, any business, is just stay committed to your goal of being successful. The thing that I enjoy about being a business owner is what I've been able to establish in the people that work with me. Because it's not me, it's a team that we have. We invest in people. I want to see my employees grow. I want to see my employees get out of life what they want out of life. And if I can help my employees get out of life what they want to get out of life, I'm eventually going to get what I want too.
Yeah.
So it gives me so much gratification to see my employees that have been with me for years, and I have numerous employees that have been with me for close to 30 years. I've seen them starting to retire. I've got a whole team of people starting to retire. I got the next generation coming up behind them. So I've seen them work for me for 30 plus years, coming up on 40 years. My installation manager, I get a kick out of that. He came to work when he was 18 years old, and he's 51 now, and he's been with me ever since. So I've seen him grow. I've seen him get married. I've seen him have kids. I've seen my sales manager at one point get married and have kids, and his kids have kids. So I know the families, and it is a pleasure to see the family business that we have of a close-knit group of people that like to work together, whether it's from the marketing department, the sales department, the installation department, the service department, or the office staff. Everybody really tries to get along, and we try to make a good environment where people like to come to work. I think you have to invest in your people. If you invest in your people, they're going to invest in you.
Yeah.
And I know they've got my back all the time. I know they do. There was times years ago when I didn't know how I was going to make payroll. I said, we're going to have to shut it down. And I remember at that time, they said, no, we're not. If you can't pay us, we'll wait until you can. And we never had to do that. I was always able to make payroll, but there's been times that it's been difficult to do that. But I had my employees stand with me. So if they stand with me, I'm going to stand with them.
Absolutely.
And try to invest in my people. Today, with that, we're able to offer a nice benefit package. We've got 401ks, we've got vacations, we got health insurance that we pay for all of our full-time employees. So we've got benefit package. I want them to have what at one time I would have wanted to have.
Yeah.
I know when I originally started with Newsash years ago, I was straight commission. No benefits, nothing, no taxes taken out. I had to handle all that on my own. And that is not an environment that I wanted to put other people into because it'll get you into trouble. It's difficult when you are a straight commission salesman. With no taxes or anything taken out, you got all that liability and you can get yourself into trouble pretty quick. And I didn't want to put my employees in that situation, so I try to put myself in each employee situation, what would be best for them.
Yeah.
And I invest in my people. I've always said, you asked me about a quote, if you take care of your people, they're going to take care of you.
Awesome. That's an amazing quote.
And I want to take care of my people.
Yeah.
Because the company is the people.
Speaking of people, you obviously have interacted with thousands of customers over the years. How have those customers changed over time? Like going back to, seeing a window from the road and pulling over in the 70s to today, how have those customers changed, or if they have at all?
That's an interesting point that you brought up. I don't think we can prospect the way we used to prospect back when I got started. People are more closed off. People are closed off because of the way we communicate today. It's not so much face-to-face. It's texting. It's back and forth. It's not that conversation. There's a lot more stories that are out there today about things that can go bad. And I know a lot of people don't answer their doors the way they used to. There used to be a time when nobody hesitated when somebody knocked on the door to open the door, see who's there. That's not the way it is today. So I know that's different. People are more guarded because of the information that's out there in the world. So we have to, as a company, how can we communicate to them? If they're looking at information for Windows online, today, a large percent of our business comes from the website, Google, social media. That wasn't the case years ago. We had telemarketing. We'd call you on the phone and aggravate me. The phone rings. And I get them all the time too. We're people. But communication has changed. As far as our customer base, I can't really say there's a big difference in the customer base itself, because I look at the people that buy replacement windows, doors. It's probably gotten a little bit younger than it used to be, because younger people are financially better off than they used to be. And young couples are getting established better today than they used to be. It used to be, I remember at one time when I got started, it seemed like people were getting close to retirement age. They want to get their house maintenance free and try to conserve energy. And of course, when I started in the business, it was during the energy embargo of 1974. So energy price had just exploded. And everybody was really concerned about energy costs at that time because it was something new. Before, nobody ever worried about what the heat was or what the air conditioning was. A lot of people didn't have that. Many people even had air conditioning in 74.
Really interesting.
So today, it's all about energy, where prior to that, it wasn't. But it started in 1974 when we had the energy embargo of 1974. Jimmy Carter was president when I started selling replacement windows. That's the way to put it into perspective.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our next segment. It's just some quick fire questions. Just want to hit you with. So first off, how do you start the day? Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee. You always been a coffee guy?
Yeah.
Always. You take it black, cream, sugar? Black.
Decaf.
Decaf.
Yeah.
Decaf.
Okay.
Well, I had a stroke in 2017.
Okay.
So after I had my stroke, that's a story that I was at work, had a stroke. I felt it was coming on. I got a hold of my wife. She got me to the hospital really quick. St. Rita's here. They did a beautiful job in the emergency room. They gave me what they call a clot buster within a time frame. And it went all through my body, and I had a blood clot in my left side of my brain, and it blew it out. And I went into the hospital on Tuesday. I walked out on Friday.
Wow.
Testified in church on Sunday about it.
That's amazing.
So it was amazing. So I came. If I hadn't got that quick response from the emergency room at St. Rita's and the neurologist that took charge of that operation, I could have had lasting. But
Yeah.
I had to give up caffeine for the most part. So
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm supposed to drink decaf.
All right. Yeah, we'll go with decaf on the record.
That makes sense.
Awesome. So besides your own, what's your favorite local business?
Oh, my favorite local business is my brother-in-law's business, International Tank.
Awesome.
My wife has worked there 40 years.
Okay.
So
And
he's
for
got
somebody who has no idea what it is, just a quick sentence, what is International Tank?
International Tank is a company located here in Lima. It's been in business for 50 years, and they build above-ground storage tanks all around the country.
Amazing. Awesome. All right. One word to describe entrepreneurship. This is a tough one.
One word.
One word.
Perseverance.
Awesome. I kind of figured you were going to pick that just based off
you
your
did.
advice. Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And then kind of last quick fire question. What is the biggest business myth today? People, they think something's true, but it's totally not.
One thing, it'll be easy.
Yeah.
You don't have to work. I'm 70 years old now. The thing I love about it is I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get to the office.
Yeah.
I'm getting feedback from my wife about when are you going to retire? And it's kind of a myth in her family. My brother-in-law, her dad, her grandfather were in business, and they worked until they died. So I don't think that's my plan, but
Gotcha. Yeah.
but I love going to work.
Yeah.
I love being with the people I work with. I like seeing the business grow, people succeed, and the growth in the people within the business. So it's my family.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, the future looks really bright. I don't think I have any more questions. Austin, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I wanted to go back. You mentioned fly fishing at the very beginning.
That's right.
As your pastime. What is it about fly fishing that makes it such a great escape or allows you to recharge as a pastime outside of work?
You know, it's something you do. It's not a team effort. You're doing it by yourself. There's a rhythm to casting a fly. You don't cast a lure, you cast a line. And at the end of the line is a fly. And it's a matter of putting the right fly at the end of the line to attract a trout. I fish primarily for trout or salmon. Certain times we make trips to Alaska. But it's being out in nature and enjoying the beauty of it. You know, I've said I've fished Montana, Alaska numerous times, in Colorado, and down in the Bahamas in the saltwater. I fly fish for saltwater in the Bahamas and the Yucatan Peninsula, and
Where's your favorite?
probably Alaska
Let's go.
for salmon. But where I go most of the time, which I call my home waters, is the Osabo River in Michigan.
Okay.
I go there every year, numerous times during the course of the year, so that's what I call my home water. Fortunately, here in Northwest Ohio, you don't really have a lot of trout streams, but you do have one down by Bell Fountain. And I'm fortunate enough to belong to a trout club down there, too, a place called Briarwood. So
Yeah.
that's when I need a little fix, I'll tell the girls I need to go fill my prescription. And they know where I'm going. I'm taking a long lunch. I'm going to Bell Fountain,
Going
down
fishing.
to the trout club.
That makes sense.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Thank you so much for coming in and telling us your story, Doug. And I think this has been really valuable, at least for me, and I think for everybody in the community too, that gives it a listen. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
That's all.
Before we go, I just want to do, we also want to thank iHeartRadio for hosting this podcast studio and letting us come in and do this awesome show. So thanks to them.
Yeah, thank you.